we're talking about the vagus nerve. And I have questions about the vagus nerve because it's like very trendy. And there are all these therapies coming out that are about the vagus nerve. I have the facts question always, like, what the heck is this thing? And then I want to know, to what extent is intervening on your vagus nerve a helpful way to soothe anxiety, get into, like, what does it do?
It does end up being kind of getting latched onto the trendy kind of thing. People have written books about sort of treatments for vagus nerve or this or that. And it's a bit too much like, okay, it's coming down to this structure. It's your vagus nerve is the problem, which is rarely the case. I have seen some people where it's clearly like, that's the thing that's wigging them out, but it's...
What does that look like? When it is like, it's clearly you got a vagus issue, what's going to happen for a person?
Well, that goes back to understanding a bit about what it is. It's one of your cranial nerves. So you have your brain and then your spinal cord, and at every level down your spine, like a spinal nerve branches out as like the electrical wiring to different parts of your body. Parts of them go to sensation, parts of them go to muscles. Your vagus nerve comes from the upper part of your neck, but has branches down in front of your neck, kind of under your collarbone. And it's a big part of what innervates a whole bunch of your organs, like your heart and your stomach and your diaphragm.
Does innervate mean like connect you to? It's the wiring to?
Exactly, yeah. Plugging into the electrical grid. So your brain and your spinal cord are your fuse box, and then you've got all these wires that branch out to help you be this big collection of sensory feedback loops, where there's signals going out and signals coming back in constantly that helps your body regulate your ability to feel and see and move. And your vagus nerve's fairly unique in that it helps regulate a lot of your just autonomic systems in your body. And it goes into
autonomic means things that you don't consciously control?
Yeah, a lot of things that are happening under the hood that are keeping you alive, you're not really attuned to most of the time. Your diaphragm's a big breathing muscle that it's two big half sort of domed like umbrellas in your mid-abdomen that drop down that help pull air into your lungs. It's part of this long snaking nerve, goes from the top part of your neck, comes down into your torso, and is the electrical wiring to a lot of your key organs that keep you alive and affect how you feel. So like if your stomach is churning or your breathing rate's kind of going or your heart rate's kind of going, part of why and how that's happening is via your vagus nerve. It also innervates part of your inner ear, your vestibular apparatus, which is it's another data set that helps you understand where you are in space.
So the vagus nerve is a part of that when that goes wrong?
Well, not explicitly. It's part of the like electrical wiring to your inner ear. You can have different things go wrong in your ear that can start...
Like your actual fluid could have a problem in there or something mechanical.
Yeah, so that nerve branches to lots of parts in your head, parts in your body. If you are undergoing a lot of stress, that will start to manifest in parts of your body that the vagus nerve is responsible for. So that doesn't mean it...
Why? Why does the vagus nerve want to transmit stress? Like my fantasy is that the vagus nerve is like, you're getting too stressed, buddy. I'm going to like gate. I'm going to make sure we don't stress out your organs or something.
People put too much on the structure. It's just part of how it manifests. That nerve connects all those things. So let's blame that nerve.
Like blaming the highway for a crime that was committed using a highway.
Exactly. So if you can see these collection of things like, oh, your stomach's doing weird stuff, you're getting kind of dizzy, your heart, you're breathing kind of funny, it doesn't mean it's necessarily that nerve. Let's treat that nerve, but it pulls things together. We can try to help do things that help calm stuff down around that nerve. It might be calming to you by means of gentle manual therapy or releasing things in and around or help draw people to the attention of those areas. You can help calm your system. In terms of how it getting kind of wonky, you can see people, you put your hands on their chest or their neck and you see they can start getting this kind of hard, kind of like twitch kind of thing that seems to be centered in and around their heart, or their stomach can keep kind of turning into knots. If you get to know them, you see how prominent stress is or how anxious or worried they are. Part of it might have come from external factors of their family or their job or their past. They start getting so uncomfortable in their body, and whether their body's twitching or their stomach's turning or they're getting dizzy, that actually becomes the stressor of how uncomfortable they are. You can try to put them in a better environment, but now their discomfort has become the primary thing. So you have to try to find some means of calming that down before they're going to have any chance of dealing with the stuff that's in their environment.
So let me see if I understand. Something stressful happens, you lose your job, and then you're like, you have a stress response. And in that moment, it overstimulates the vagus nerve. Is that what happens? And like that person starts to feel a bunch of, like somebody's like, oh, my tummy hurts because I'm anxious. Is that the vagus nerve sending a signal that you're anxious? Or like,
Again, not explicitly that it's just the vagus nerve doing that, but that's the pathway of how that ends up happening, that your stomach turns into knots when you're anxious. Yes.
so then the electrical system, the highway, conducts this information to your stomach and it gets active. And then that information comes back up that nervous system to your brain, which is like, oh my God, my stomach's hurting or my chest is hurting.
Yeah.
Increase the stress and you get a positive feedback loop where now it sends more stress down to the system. So it reads more stress and then you get stuck. And then like the external stressor is gone, you got your job back, but that thing is all still firing like crazy.
Yeah, and it can trigger a fear response. If you don't kind of put the two together, like I'm uncomfortable, like, do I have cancer in my stomach? Do I have an ulcer? I think one of the most commonly prescribed medications is proton pump inhibitors or PPIs from doctors for like indigestion type feelings, which is like, so my stomach's problematic. You go to your doctor, like, here, let's try to control the acid in your stomach. Here's a pill. I don't have to change anything in my world besides take this pill a bit more often. And long-term use of those it can make it all worse.
Right. Because the actual source of the acid is not some like biological overproduction, but it's actually being caused by your brain and that wiring system as a response to stress.
It's the same thing with inflammation. Generally, the medical system's relationship with pain thinks everything is inflammation based. Sometimes that's the case. Usually, it's a dysregulation or irritation in your nervous system that's causing things to kind of tense or guard. And that tension creates discomfort, which can lead to something locally being inflamed. But the inflammation as itself was not the starting point of that, it was the symptom. Now, again, that's where pills and medications tend to come at treating the symptom. And sometimes you need to treat the symptom to calm a person down, to get them to a place where they might be able to have the capacity to deal with the cause.
Interesting. So then to what extent when you intervene on the vagus nerve, whatever that looks like, I know there are various interventions, how would that reduce that feedback loop? Just by like literally reducing how much signal is going back and forth? Like it's just the highway, like deal with the problem that's causing that. When you successfully intervene on a vagus nerve to the extent that you can, what happens? Does it just get less fiery?
Again, I'll qualify that it's less the nerve itself is more as the person, and the nerve is part of that person, where I've learned a lot of osteopathic manual therapy called visceral manipulation, which is a manual therapy technique that's targeted around more treating, trying to help just feel, assess, move a little bit, help connect a person to the tissues around their organs on the premise that people experience a lot of their emotions in and around their organs. If you're really sad, you can have kind of a heavy heart. If you're feeling a lot of grief, a lot of that tends to be in and around your bronchial tubes. If you're anxious, your loops of your small intestine trying to churn into knots. And your vagus nerve is tied to that experience. So trying to help calm or treat the vagus nerve is via the fascia around those organs. People have more of a connection to feeling the tension they hold in their muscular system, less so what might be in and around their organs because they can't touch them as much. If you understand the anatomy of where organs are and what they're attached to on the inside, and the general kind of types of stresses and emotions people tend to hold in around them, you can, with your hands, start to push on people in a way that starts to just kind of engage those tissues, help people feel that like that's where they're holding something. If you can hold it and take it into a bit of a position of ease and get people breathing a little bit, it can help them let something go, which in itself creates a calming sensation in the body, which then will calm a bit of that overactivity that's happening within that vagus nerve, because it does affect different parts, like around your heart or around your stomach or into your ear. It's like you can get less amps running through the system. Again, as using that electrical grid scenario, there's a certain number of amps running through you. If you crank up those amps too high, it gets dysregulating. And if they get too low, it's dysregulating. We function well in a certain range. We can globally have a whole bunch of coffee and see how you feel. Or very locally in certain parts of our body, you can start feeling like there's too much signal. My body's paying way too much attention to my arm or to my stomach. And it's a means of subtly helping people kind of calm that down in a more of a manual therapy kind of way.
Interesting. And what I like about the thought is that it's kind of like uniting two ideas, which is something you've said with basically every treatment you offer. It's like, I can ease the tension in your system, and then you have to use that eased tension to find out how to ease the tension in your system. And that is a key relationship between treating somebody and the way that they need to make changes themselves.
It's the whole, you can give a person a fish or teach them how to fish.
Yes. In this case, it's kind of like, let me catch a fish for you and show you, and then I'm going to give you the rod.
Exactly. There are fish in that lake. Here's proof.
Yes, exactly.
And like, maybe it's you that's making it so you can't figure out how to fish. Let me show you how to do this a little bit. And that's where you have to start just calming people down a little bit and let them go through a cycle of seeing that, like, oh, I feel better. I come back, I'm all amped up again. I feel better. That's where they start finding a bit of some motivation to maybe they got to do something, that not be totally reliant on me to do that for them.
But they can draw on those moments with you to like access them. Because I think that's a huge part of teaching someone something, is giving them access to the cognitive state they need, or body state, to actually do it. And like you're saying, like sometimes they just can't even get there themselves. So that's maybe an interesting thing that practitioners do, is create a memory almost. Like I think about that in a first session. If I'm doing math, I really want that kid to have the feeling of, oh, I know how to do math. Oh, I got that. Because as soon as they can lock in on, I can get it, there are moments where I have got it, then their homework goes better when I'm not there.
I've noticed that with my daughter, and after you've taught her some math, actually, she's starting to actually teach some other kids math in class right now, which has been good.
Yes, that makes me really happy.
You can try to give people the tools to do it themselves. That's where and why most different forms of meditation and yoga and things have breathing practices in them, because your emotional state gets reflected in how you are or aren't breathing. And it's one of the physiological systems that does happen under the hood. Like, you're not totally paying attention to how you're breathing, it will keep you alive. But if you can learn how to tune into that and do different forms of box breathing or 4-7-8 breathing or different, that gives you access to calming down your vagus nerve and your body as a whole.
I discovered something. I think I was telling you about this app that I found called The Way. It's a meditation app that's extremely technical, which I really love. And the technique around breathing that I had never tried is labeling the in and out breaths. Just like as it comes in, you just say to yourself in. And as it goes out, you say out. And it has brought a relaxation to my breath that no other breathing exercise ever has. I have this theory that it's related to linking the breathing to your conscious mind. A word is the most conscious thing our brains do, is create a word. So when you have a deep physical sensation and then you have a word for it, I think that integrates your sense of breathing. And I notice that I will start hearing in my head, in, out, just walking around, and I'm not even thinking about it.
You need to put some kind of context around it, where I like to tell people to do 4-7-8 breathing, that you're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, out for 8 seconds. It's the same kind of thing. You've put some kind of label on it. In my office on the wall, I have a poster that has a picture where you can see a woman with, and it's kind of translucent. You can see all the organs underneath, and try to just point out to people how big your lungs are, and try that they start above your collarbones, wrap around your heart, and they're underneath your whole rib cage, that there are these big balloons inside you. So trying to visualize these two big emotional bags inside you, that while you're doing that 4, 7, 8, or the in or the out, that you're inflating them to the point that it makes your rib cage stretch a bit. And so you can actually visualize what's happening in there. You're thinking about it a little bit. And even at that point, you've paused for a sec and you're engaging in the process of your breathing.
Yeah. And you brought your attention into your body, which is a huge problem for a lot of people who have their attention out here. People are like, take a deep breath, which actually can cause you to hyperventilate. The exhale has to be longer. The hold and exhale has to be more than the inhale. Usually like by in the 7-8, it's like a 4-to-1 ratio. And that's something I never learned. And now I say to my students, take a deep breath out, which is actually illogical, but they totally get it.
Again, more tilt on the anxious side, don't realize that they're not breathing out. If you're having a bit of a panic attack, they're trying to get air in. So trying to tell people to breathe can actually be counterproductive. It's kind of, they got to calm a little bit and do a slow, longer out, and then a shorter in, and then they'll realize they start finding the space a bit more.
What I want to bring up is something that I feel like we could just scratch the surface on because it's a huge topic. I'm really specializing in a tiny caseload and focusing on like major transformative change wherever I can, especially if I'm working for people for like a year. They're paying me like a private school tuition. I want to provide 2 private school tuitions worth of value. So that's got me thinking about the mechanisms of transformative change or radical change. And I'd want to say at the outset, I'm not talking about radical change that happens in a moment of insight, because I don't think I've ever seen that happen for real. Like you have a moment of insight, but then the next day you forget, and then you don't do your homework or you don't do the thing, and then it's gone. So I'm talking about when people really change the way in which they relate to the world. And I'm trying to identify like what are some of the crucial variables. I mean, we're not going to get that done in this conversation, but a question I have for you and for me is like, when somebody has made an incredible change, what did they change? What variables did they self-regulate? And of course, it differs by person and all that. One thing I'm thinking about in my work is parental involvement, something I never thought of earlier. And now I've noticed that in all the cases where the radical change happens, the parents are on board for what we're doing and they don't have like a lot of resistance, or I've worked through the resistance with them. What do you think?
The biggest thing I could say that I've witnessed or I've seen has been people that have decided to do psilocybin guided journeys.
Word.
I've seen people that have been really stuck. I can keep putting out fires for them. They have grooves of thought that they cannot get out of, and that is the fundamental part that's making them uncomfortable. And I've seen people work with counselors and do like a big psilocybin guided journey and then come back like within the first couple weeks of after that and first off, feel how differently and less tension they hold in their bodies, particularly around their heart and chest, and then see people be a bit stunned by it and kind of not know what to do with that information of what just happened to them, and some for better and for worse initially. And then it created a bit more of an openness to them and a little bit more of a calm, or be more open to the things that happened in their childhood. Yeah, it's kind of a big stun. And then seeing them over 6 months or so start to make little changes over time that just changed how they relate to the world.
What's interesting there is you're saying that allows them to make small changes on a daily basis for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because it is a big experience. And I do think that there is such thing as an anchor state, like a state you can go back to. Like I don't never know with Darren Brown, the magician hypnotist guy, if it's real, but he has this crazy special where he gets people to rob an armored car without telling them to. He just creates all these like anchor mental states around action, and he subliminally tells them to do it. And he selects a group of 20 down to the 3 most, or actually the 4, and one of them doesn't do it. The 4 most like vulnerable people. Their action, that crazy impulsive action to rob an armored car, which is not a real car, is a relationship between like what they're doing in that moment and all these anchor states they can now remember, which are like, in this case, around criminality. But it's interesting to think about how, as a practitioner, you can provide an anchor moment like that we're talking about with the fish too, that then allows somebody to do like small things in the future. Like I'm thinking about the math again. It's like they're in their homework. They're not feeling that amazing feeling when they were working with you and they really got it. They're feeling confused, but they no longer feel that they could never get it. And that is creating the openness for them to try for another 5 minutes, which then starts a positive feedback cycle where like, oh, that kind of worked. So next time I can give it 7 minutes, or I can do it 2 days this week. Because that's what I've noticed, is that transformative change comes when somebody decides like every day I am going to do something a little bit differently. And what I think is constant is that they're focused on the situation and like they're focused on making a change. But it's those little adjustments, 1% a day compounded over 365 days is like huge. Now I'm starting to think, oh, there's like a relationship between the big moments and the ability to stay persevering in the little moments.
Very much so. And the nature of my job, I see people through a lot of big moments and can see how it either can take them down or be the thing that was traumatic at the time, but was the impetus to change over time. Okay, I see people that have gotten car accidents or had their partners die. I see a lot of people where they're just transitioning to retiring and figuring out their new identity as a retired person. I've seen people thrive in that, or seen a number of just some older people that have their partners all of a sudden died. And so some big shock to the system things, once you kind of deal with that, can be the thing that like, or I saw a guy wake up in a hospital bed after having a heart attack in his early 50s, and his hospital bed said, I'm going to do the Ironman this year, after never having done a triathlete in his life and was not built to be an Ironman guy, and went and did the Ironman for like the next 4 years in a row until I'm like, okay, this is now a year to take off from doing the Ironman. Yeah, you did it. Now all your joints hate you and you need to take a break. Sometimes you do need a shock to the system because we are creatures of habit and we get down into just grooves of thought and how we do things, and just the thought that you could never experience something different. That people have a hard time seeing that.
A lot of times in a case, a person might be thinking, there's no hope for me. And I'm thinking, oh no, something's going to happen in your life. I can see you're responsive. Some shit is going to hit the fan at some point, and you're going to respond to that. But what if instead of that, we like tried to create a bit of that experience right now, so you don't have to bottom out on it. You don't have to wait until you have a heart attack or whatever. And I think it's an interesting thing to think about how a clinician's job might be to, like, without a trauma, try to create a similar experience. You can't literally do those experiences, but you can create some peak experiences, like the relief you've mentioned. You create a moment of relief. For me, I think it's usually a moment of confidence for somebody who has not felt confident.
It's something that does shock the system or rattle them a little bit to help them be like, whoa, like it can be different. I kind of liked it that way. How do I get that without creating some level of addiction?
And maybe that's the memory piece. This is super speculative, but addiction is highly focused around those seeking and wanting behaviors, not that actually what you get, which is why you get addicted to something that doesn't make you happy. But being able to savor the results, which is less of that seeking and more of the reward part, and being able to bring that up in your mind. Oh, that feeling when I felt good. We were talking about quitting caffeine. And when I was having trouble with that last week, I anchor stated back to this moment 2 weeks ago when I could feel my reduced caffeine reducing my stress. Like it's a physical memory of it. So I think this anchor state idea is interesting for maybe even teaching to people. I'm thinking about clients I might mention this to and have them try to actually bring up an anchor state, like when they felt confident in math or something when they're feeling dejected.
People that have had a hard time for a long time, they can tend to withdraw and do less and less and less, trying to find something to make them do that's hard. We want to support people, but we also coddle people. So create a little controlled trauma in their life and make them do something hard, and then see that they survived it and might feel a little better on the other side.
You've been listening to Why Things Hurt and How We Learn with your hosts, Brent Stevenson and Matt Giammarino. Why Things Hurt and How We Learn is brought to you by our sponsors, Envision Physiotherapy, Work with Matt, whythingshurt.com, and Remix Your Education. Subscribe to the podcast at Apple Music, Spotify, or on your favorite podcast app.